first step is to create the relationship between the two elements that we want. So in this case, we're looking to create a set-driven key relationship between this vertebra, which I'm going to call T4, and this schematic vertebra, which I'm going to call T5. So the first thing I can do is just establish or introduce you to my scene a little bit. You can see I've got these two vertebrae and a disc in between. We're not going to work with the disc right now, so I'm going to hide that layer so we can focus on just the two vertebrae. So both vertebrae are groups. They have all the components we used to create them earlier. I'm going to make sure that they both have no history. I'm going to freeze their transformations. Now, as far as centering their pivot, I want the pivot to be in the middle. So if I say modify center pivot, see the pivot by default is over here because it includes the whole group. But I want the group to rotate in the middle of the body. So I'm going to hold down the letter D and the letter X and snap to the grid right there. And then without holding anything but D, I'm just going to lower that point right there. Do the same thing here. See, notice this one already has some history on it, so I'm going to say edit by type history. I'm going to freeze his transformations because his transformations have been changed. And then I'm going to center its pivot. Letter D to move the pivot point. X to snap to grid. Whoops. Letter D to move the pivot point. X to snap to grid. And then I want to get down. I can actually hold D and the letter V, which will let me snap to a point, which will snap it right to that point in the middle. Okay, so now I have both of these without any history. Their transformations are frozen and their pivot point is at the point I want in the center of the body. Okay, so now I want to create the set-driven key relationship. So what I'm going to do is first, I've got my disk on a separate layer. I'm going to hide that so I just can focus just on the two vertebrae. I'm going to go under the, I'm going to select the bottom vertebra. Now it's automatically going to be established as the driven, and just give me a second, you'll see what I mean. So the top one will be the driver, like we're in a cab. This is the cab driver, this is the passenger or the person being driven. Okay, so I've got the T5 selected. I'm going to say I'm in the animation menu set, and I'm going to pick key, set driven key, set, and see by default whatever object you have selected, Maya makes the driven. Now you can change this. You could go up under here and say change the selected as driver or change it as driven, anything you want. But by default, when you open this window, if something's selected, it's going to make it the driven. So I'm going to select the vertebra above. I'm going to see load selected as driver. And I know I want the rotation axis for these two, rotation X attribute, to be the attribute that I'm going to use to control, have the driver control the driven. So you notice when I selected two attributes, it doesn't have to be the same. They could be, I could have the rotation doing any one of these. I now say key, and now there's a relationship. Now this is not keyframing. This is a different relationship. What it says is now the driver's rotation X drives the driven's rotation X. Okay. So far, nothing's going to happen, right? Let's see. See, it doesn't have anything happening because we have to set some values here now. Alright, so what I'm going to do with my driven selected, I'm going to establish the rotation X as 6, and I'm going to complement or do the opposite so I can look at this, but I know what I want here, and I'm going to establish it as -6, so it's just the opposite. And then I'm going to say key again. Now I'm going to go back to my driver, and I'm going to create the opposite situation when, so right now I've got this relationship going. In other words, I go from 0 to the driver going to 6 and the driven going to -6. But notice I can make the driver go any value, but the bottom one, the driven, can only go between 0 and -6 right now. I'm going to go back. I'm going to put my driver right at 0. And I'm going to go now for the opposite. So this would be during extension, right? So I'm going to make the driver go. This time it will go to -6. And the driven will go to a value of 6. And I'm going to key it again. So now when I go after the driver, when I move the driver, now I have a relationship that says I can go there to there. So two things that are important. The numbers here that I'm using, 6, those are totally arbitrary. I just, by experimenting, felt that that represented the range of motion. Second thing that you want to notice is there's no limit right now. I can do anything I want with that driven, the driver, but the driven can only go between the ranges of -6 and +6. Okay, no matter how far I push the driver. And the problem is I don't want that driver to go past the same range, 6 and -6. So in the next video I'm going to show you how to control that.